At 8:57 p.m. on Saturday, November 12, 2022, 21-year-old University of Idaho college student Kaylee Goncalves posted a series of pictures on Instagram with her fellow University of Idaho roommates and friends. In the main photo, which has now been seen all over the news medias across the country, the picture shows Madison Mogen sitting on Kaylee Goncalves' shoulders as Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle stand next to them smiling. One of the captions reading, "One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day." Mogen and Goncalves were both 21. Xana Kernodle and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin were both 20 at the time. Little did the four students know that in 7 hours they would be brutally murdered, and their story would become a national case. The murders. The large 3-story 6-bedroom house on 1122 King Road was home to the University of Idaho students. This is where Mogen, Kernodle, and Goncalves, along with 2 other students, lived. Ethan Chapin, who was dating Xana Kernodle, often stayed the night. In the early hours of November 13th, 2022, a little after 4 a.m., someone entered the 1122 King Road home through the ground-level sliding door on the 2nd floor. During what appears to be a 15 to 20-minute span, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle were brutally murdered. The victims were all stabbed with what appeared to be a large knife. The next day, the bodies were discovered by their 2 roommates, and police were called to the scene. The small town of Moscow, Idaho was not ready for the weeks and months that would soon follow, and the news of the 4 students' deaths would become national headlines. The aftermath. So what exactly happened inside of that house? This is what we know according to the probable cause affidavit. Based on one of the surviving roommates, Dylan Mortensen, sometime between 4 and 4:20 a.m., she woke up hearing the sounds of Goncalves playing with her dog on the 3rd floor. A short time later, she hears whom she believes is Goncalves saying something to the effect of, "There's someone here." Mortensen looks out her bedroom, but doesn't see anything. As time goes by, Mortensen opens the door a second time when she hears what she thinks is crying from the Kernodle's room. She then hears a male voice saying something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Time passes again, and Mortensen opens her door for a 3rd time after she hears crying. When she opens the door, she sees a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covers the person's mouth and nose. The person walks past her as she stands in a frozen shock phase, then walks towards the back sliding door and leaves. She describes the person as being a male, 5'10" or taller, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. She locks herself in her bedroom after seeing the person exit. There's been a lot of talk about why Mortensen waited until almost noon the next day to call the police, but chances are that she was in such a state of shock that she was too scared to do anything. The crime scene at 1122 King Road was so brutal that the press would release an image that showed blood dripping from the 1st floor bedroom down an exterior wall at the back of the house. In the days following the murders, the police were on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra. The suspects seemed to have gotten away with the perfect murder, but there was no suspects, no word on anything of who was involved, or so we thought. A tan leather knife sheath was left on the bed next to Mogen's body. The sheath was later processed and had K-Bar USMC and the United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe and Anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. Idaho State Labs later located a single source of male DNA left on the button snap of the knife sheath, and that DNA was matched to a Bryan Kohberger. The suspect. In the early morning of Friday, December 30th, 2022, police arrested Kohberger at his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Many questions remained. So who was Bryan Kohberger? The 28-year-old Kohberger was a criminology doctoral student at WSU when the murders took place and apparently stayed in Pullman through the end of the semester. Investigators used surveillance camera footage, cell phone data, and FBI analysis to link Kohberger to the crime scene at the time of the killings. They already had Bryan Kohberger's DNA on a knife sheath, but there was more. Bryan Kohberger owned a white Hyundai Elantra, the same vehicle that police had been looking for after the murders. According to police, a white Hyundai Elantra was seen traveling near the student's house in Moscow, Idaho, between 3:29 a.m. and 4:20 a.m., the estimated time of the murders. The white Elantra circled the area 3 times and then entered it a 4th time at 4:04 a.m. The vehicle, which matches the description of the one owned by Kohberger, was seen departing the area around 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. According to the probable cause affidavit, Kohberger visited the area near the victim's home at least 12 times. Law enforcement followed Kohberger and his father to Pennsylvania. They took trash from Kohberger's family residence in Albrightsville on December 27th. The evidence was then sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. They had eyes on Kohberger the whole time, watching his every move. Kohberger's attorney asked to delay a preliminary hearing until June, and the judge has set it for June 26th at 9 a.m. Grieving parents and friends, as well as a nation, waits for answers. Epilogue. Being a father myself, this case really hits home. I've been following this case since the beginning, and during this time we've been seeing some interesting things coming out. We now have video of the young girls as police officers visit their dorm, telling them to keep the noise down because their parties are too loud. You now have a moving, breathing person behind these pictures that we've often seen on television news networks of these kids. And they are just that, kids. They were 20 and 21, just starting their life. And it is a tragic situation. And we have to wait until June, hopefully no delays, to get answers to this, because this became national news. And not only are people in the United States covering this, but there's people in the UK covering it as well on YouTube. Sadly, because we have a lot of internet sleuths, a lot of misinformation has been coming out about this case. So I guess it's safe to say that we have to wait until June 2023 to really get details of what happened. We know very little now, but Bryan Kohberger is an interesting person. And the news media is comparing him to Ted Bundy, which in itself is pretty interesting because Bundy was one of the most horrific murderers, but he was also smart. And we may see that in this case as well. Kohberger has the background, the college education, and maybe he was doing this for a cheap thrill to see how it is to murder somebody, to get that adrenaline, and to see if he could get away with it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this case. At the end of the day, though, we can't lose sight of the 4 victims: Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogen, and Xana Kernodle. These are the 4 victims whose lives were taken far too soon. And you got to think about their parents too. You send your kids off to college thinking that, they're going to become something. It's sad when you realize that they're never coming home.